Oh, here's George.
Okay, Val's going to be a couple minutes late.
Okay.
Okay. It is 7:02. I'm Carol Lisbon, Chair of the Dover Planning Board. I'm calling this meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted via Zoom per directions and authorization of Governor Healy. I will remind everybody to please keep themselves on mute if they're not participating at the time so that we can avoid any background noise. And if you do have something to say when your agenda item comes up, please either raise your hand or make a comment in the chat group and we will make sure to recognize you. And if we don't recognize you, then just start waving like this and we will find you. So with that, we're going to start our first agenda item, which is a pool cabana at 167 Pine Street. And I know, Kurt, you're here. Who else do we have representing 167 Pine Street? Anybody else besides Kurt?
This is Donna Van Shagen.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we turn it over to either Kurt or Donna, who's ever going to discuss the cabana first, and then we'll turn it over to our town planner. So Kurt or Donna?
I guess that'll be me.
Okay.
So we are constructing a pool cabana, basically replacing the old one. We had the plot, the land surveyed, and we have plenty of room for the setbacks on all sides. So that's it. You can't see it from the street. It's pretty much contained to the backyard right behind the house. And I can kind of give you whatever other information you want.
Okay, thank you. Jasmine, you want to pull the plans up? If you would. I did see them there for a moment. There we go. Maybe we could make it full screen. But my question is, how much of the Reed's Ferry pool is actually being customized, or is it really just dropping it in onto the foundation?
It's just dropping it onto the foundation.
Okay. And will there be any plumbing or any type of electrical supply in there?
Yes, for the pool equipment. But we're not putting in a bathroom or any running water or anything like that, like a sink or anything. It's just basically a structure, and the pool equipment will be the only thing that's going to need the electrical and the plumbing, which is already installed.
Okay.
Existing.
I mean, for all the pumps and that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Jasmine, walk us through this, and as we go through the items, if anybody on the planning board has any questions, please so ask. I see Bill has joined us as well.
Sure, I'm just going to share it with you while we go over it. Can you see it?
No.
Maybe now?
Yes, I see some of it. It's sort of like a half screen
Both sides?
on the top. You've got all the layout stuff on top. Is it just me or does everybody see that?
The ribbon?
Yeah, maybe in this case,
Yeah,
maybe
above that, that's a few inches.
But bottom, I think bottom right, Jasmine, the little arrow, right by where your cursor is. I think that'll up a little bit.
Yeah,
Yep.
right.
Click that, yeah. Yep,
Full screen mode.
click it again. Click always, yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so this is to construct a pool house with the dimensions that are 16 by 24 with 6-foot overhang. This is a prefabricated um, structure. The property will look the same as it does now from the road. You cannot see the location of the pool house from the road or it appears from abutting property. We did receive a preliminary site plan review and plan signed and stamped for the shed as well. The application does comply with all of the dimensional requirements for the accessory building. It meets all the setback requirements. There's no disruption to the proposed driveway with this work or the existing driveway with the proposed work. The parking is adequate. This won't adjust the parking. The pool house matches the existing structure in the neighborhood. It's unlikely this will have any detrimental impact on surrounding premises, and it's consistent with the neighborhood. It's consistent with the character of the existing structure, will have minimal impacts on groundwater or open space, does not have any impact on town resources, is consistent in quality and appearance to the existing neighborhood, and complies with the requirements of the zoning bylaws.
Okay, are there any questions from planning board members?
It broadly says it, but I assume the color and siding are to match the house.
Yes,
Which
it's
Questions?
white vinyl siding with black trim. Which is the
Okay.
same as,
Can you see the
Yes.
rendering?
It's Jody. I'm probably missing it, but I don't see the septic plan on the site plan. Or the septic noted. Am I missing that? Sorry.
oh, I don't,
It's okay.
sure. The septic's in the front of the house.
Oh, it's in the front. Okay.
Yep.
But it's a good point, Jody, that we do expect the septic to be shown on a plan. Any other comments? Okay, so let's put up the decision. Again, if you would, thank you. I'd like to go back to the top. I'd like you to add something to it. The second paragraph. If after parentheses with the size, we can add using a Reed's Ferry shed with electrical and plumbing service for pool equipment. Period. And then before I read the decision, at the end,
Carol, I might just mention, I don't know how we might do it, but because we do normally see the septic and it's just a process thing, not to hold this up. But is there something to build in that we, the owner testified that or something like that, that I just from a consistency perspective with other applications?
yep, no, that's a great idea, and it's one of the reasons we're trying to put together a detailed checklist so that
Yeah.
when we do an application, we can actually make sure that it's complete.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent point. When we go back up to the background that we just added my sentence to and add the applicant explained that the septic system is in the front of the house. Is that okay, Jody?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe something, sorry, I don't mean to be such a stickler on what is actually a non-point, but only just thinking about the broader pool of applications. No, that's a pun, not really a pool, but something to the effect of, and we agreed that we didn't need to see it on the site plan in this case, is basically what I'm getting at. Because if I was another applicant and didn't show it, you'd be like, well, you didn't make that person show it. Just a thought. I don't want to hammer the point, so we can.
Yep. Why don't we just leave it out of this and ask that the planning board office make sure that when a plan comes in, the site plan is complete? And we'll just leave it this way for now.
Okay.
And if we go to the end, then the decision. We have a fourth point to make, which has to do with water, which is what we put in every pool application. The pool, I'm sorry.
The
this
pool is existing,
This is
so I
Cabana.
didn't put it
Never
on.
mind. It's a cabana. Got it, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to read the decision. After considering the application and other materials submitted at its meeting of April 30th, 2024, the board approved the plans entitled Certified Plot Plan by A.S. Elliott Associates, stamped and signed by Elliott Patuzzo, PLS, and dated March 29, 2024, with the following conditions. 1, prior to the issuance of a building permit, minor modifications to the site plan may be approved administratively by the planning board chair. 2, any future modifications to the site shall be reviewed and approved by the planning board. And 3, the lighting on the site must not spill over onto any adjoining property. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, let me do a roll call vote. Carol Lisbon, yes. Scott?
Yes.
Scott? George?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And Jody?
Yes.
Okay, unanimous approval. Thank you. Enjoy the cabana. I hope you have a
Thank
nice.
you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank-
good night. Okay, the second site plan for discussion tonight is a replacement of the salt shed that's currently behind the highway garage, and we have our DPW Director, Kevin McCabe, here tonight. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Good evening.
Is there
Here with me
anybody
that'll
else?
be conducting the presentation is Jesse O'Donnell, the Senior Project Manager with Weston and Sampson.
Good evening to the board. Thank you, Kevin. My name is Jesse. I'm an engineer with Weston and Sampson representing the Department of Public Works tonight. Let me share my screen and just make sure everyone can see the presentation here. Bear with me one moment. All right, I believe I'm presenting. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Great. All right, so this presentation is pursuant to a site plan review application for site improvements to the town garage property at 2 Dedham Street. So without further ado, I'll jump in. I'd like to usually start these presentations off by orienting the team with an aerial image here. So on the screen, you see an aerial image. On the bottom in green is the town hall. So just across Dedham Street from the town hall is the long and narrow paved parcel that we're working with here tonight. So in orange on the plan is the town garage building, which contains some administrative space as well as operational space for the DPW. Behind that, I boxed in red the general location of a subsurface stormwater chamber system, which will be a subject of discussion tonight. And then behind that is in blue, which is the existing wood salt shed, which we will be proposing to replace. And before I jump into the actual plans here, I'd like to just orient everyone with our plan rotation. The sky blue arrows and baseline that you see here is kind of the axis upon which we delineated our site plans. So with that said, I'll jump into the existing conditions plan. On the bottom of the slide here is the existing conditions line work. I'd like to start off with the wooden salt shed. That is the blue polygon on the right side of the slide. So as I mentioned before, the existing salt shed is showing signs of structural failure and needs to be replaced. There's an image I've placed on the top right of the screen showing an image of that salt shed. So we're proposing to replace it with a fabric and concrete block salt shed, which is very standard in the industry, and I'll jump more into that level of detail on the next slide. The second existing feature on site I'd like to bring some attention to here is the subsurface stormwater chamber system. That's the red box on this plan. And it's a chamber system that accepts a lot of stormwater runoff from most of the paved site. The site here is what I've colored in a beige color, and most of the paved area on the site is all being caught by catch basins and inlets and being routed to that red subsurface stormwater chamber system. The issue with this system and why it's a subject of discussion tonight is that it has a lot of sediment in it that has gradually accumulated inside the chambers over the years. When this system was designed a few decades ago, it wasn't designed with any of the stormwater regulations at the state level as we know them today. So there wasn't really any pre-treatment stormwater features to kind of collect and gather that sediment upon which, you know, the basin then could be maintained. So the sediments gradually gathered in that system and has really made the system unable to store stormwater to the extent that it was designed to, because the sand and the sediments occupying so much of it. That's causing site flooding. With some of the large recent rainstorms that we've experienced in recent summers, the site has flooded a bit as a result of this underperformance of this system. So we are proposing to replace it in the same location, which I'll discuss more on the next slide. The last existing feature I'd like to mention here are the wetland system immediately adjacent to the salt shed, which are labeled in pink on this plan. Weston and Sampson delineated this isolated wetland last year, and the conservation application process is ongoing since our site is within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, where we have an application, a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission that's ongoing. Before we jump into the proposed slides here, I'd just like to mention a few zoning items on the existing site. The salt shed in blue is bisected by a property line you can see on this plan. Those are the two parcels that make up our kind of our limit of work here. There's the much larger parcel, which the town garage is located on, but then there's a small portion of another parcel on the top right of the image here that the salt shed occupies, and that's in a residential zone. The much larger portion that the most of the site is on is in an open space zone. We have corresponded with the zoning enforcement officer in town, Walter Avalone, and he has confirmed with us that no Board of Appeals permit would be needed for this work. We're not intensifying any non-conformance that the existing salt shed has. So with that said, I'll jump into the proposed improvements here. We're going to focus on the rear portion of the parcel here in this blue frame. So on this plan is a snippet of our proposed site plan. And the first feature I'd like to discuss is that new fabric salt shed. On the top right of this screen, you'll see a rendering of what generally that will look like. The proposed salt shed it's a fabric salt shed, but it's mounted on concrete blocks, which is very standard. And then we have this frame supported fabric membrane structure mounted on top of the blocks. And we're proposing a dark green fabric just to harmonize with the aesthetics of the trees around the site. So again, this proposed salt shed is in the same location. It's within the footprint of the existing salt shed, and it's about 31.5 feet tall, which is lower than the maximum height in the zoning district and is generally consistent with the height of the existing salt shed. So in addition to this, the other site improvements we're making is, as I mentioned before, replacing the subsurface chamber system that's in the rear portion of the site. Again, that's in red on this plan. And on the bottom right, I've shown an image of what these tend to look like during the construction process, just for everyone's visualization's sake. So the proposed chamber system is bigger than the existing one, significantly bigger so that it can accommodate more stormwater flow. It has a slightly bigger footprint, but I think more notably is there's a much deeper chamber profile. So the proposed chambers are about 45 inches deep, whereas the existing ones, I think, are closer to about 25 inches deep. We also have preliminary treatment features that we're proposing in the form of hydrodynamic separators, which are manhole units that can collect some of the sediment as well as isolator rows. And these are rows of our chamber system that will be completely surrounded by a geotextile fabric. If you see the image on the bottom right, you see the black fabric underneath some of those yellow chambers. The isolator rows are completely surrounded by that fabric to really catch a lot of the sediment before water then moves on to the rest of the rows of the system. So those two features will capture a lot of the sediment and suspended solids that stormwater will bring into the system and allow for easy maintenance for the DPW. In addition to the stormwater improvements by the chamber system, we have an improved outlet control network. We have an outlet control structure that will contain a weir with a series of orifices that are specifically designed with our hydrologic model to throttle the amount of water leaving the system during high storm events. So when there's an intense storm event, water will be controlled by this structure and eventually leaving out through the outlet system and entering the wetlands at a rate that is much lower than that in existing conditions. The peak flows to those wetlands will be reduced as a result of this design. So that's just an important piece I'd like to mention. I think the second to last piece I'd like to mention here is in purple on the bottom left of the plan. It's a small holding tank that accepts some flow from the floor drains internal to the garage building. It's a subsurface tank that's showing some signs of leaking. So we're proposing to replace that in place with a subsurface double-walled fiberglass holding tank. And last but not least, our site improvements here end with a proposed replacement of the wood stockade fence on kind of the top of the screen here. There's a faint yellow line along the property line. We're just looking to replace that existing wooden stockade fence with a newly proposed one. Okay, so I think that covers the bulk of the scope I'd like to talk about in terms of site improvements tonight. I'll leave us here with an image of what these fabric salt sheds tend to look like. I'd like to thank everyone for their time and open it up to any questions or any final comments that Kevin would like to add.
Okay, Jesse, thank you. Kevin, do you have anything to add before we open it up?
No, I think Jesse summarized everything, and we'll certainly answer any questions from residents of the board.
Okay, thank you. I would note that to Jesse's point, the Conservation Commission does have a public hearing scheduled for May 8th. For this site. And I hope you've all received the email that was sent out late this afternoon came from Jasmine, but originated with Mike Anduri on his comments about stormwater, which was that he's okay with the plans for stormwater management. So we didn't have that new stormwater system last summer, right, Kevin?
Right.
Is the funding for this, is this what was approved at town meeting back in 2023?
No, this is on annual town meeting this year.
This year.
Next 1 week from, or less than a week, yes.
For the shed as well as the drainage system, the whole thing?
So I guess to clarify that question, only the salt shed is on for annual town meeting. The board has already voted and committed ARPA funding to fund the collection system and drainage conveyance.
Ah, okay. Okay. Let's open this up to the other planning board members. You have any questions for Kevin or Jesse?
A question.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Val.
My question was just, it doesn't look like on either picture there's a door. Do these tend to have doors, or is it just for the picture you didn't put one on?
No, it's just that opening. Yeah, they tend to not have doors.
Sorry, Don. You done, Val?
I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now, my question was just around the existing structure. I know that you said it's for lack of a better word, in disrepair, and I couldn't really tell from the small picture there. So it seems like effectively, this is the same size, what's going in its place, and maybe this is the wrong take, but it seems like we're going from a sort of substantial building to a effectively less substantial building. And I guess in looking at that picture, I can see that maybe some of the sheathing on the side is rotted. Can you explain to me the ways in which the existing structure is no longer sufficient, please?
Yeah, so this picture doesn't do it much justice. You can see obviously the metal girder in the middle there, that's kicked out. I don't know, I wasn't present, but I believe Carol toured it yesterday and took some photos. All of the knockers basically on the side of the building. There we go. You can see that they're kind of bowing at the seams. The reason why highway departments and public works facilities have gotten away from doing wooden structures is because essentially you're throwing live loads against, basically the same type of dwelling you would have, right, as your residential home. So both sides of this building, it's actually flexing out on the sides. Probably, I don't know if it was 4 years ago or 5, it was prior to my arrival, but the inside of it, there was an insurance job. A tree fell through the roof of it. So that wasn't, to my opinion, remediated properly. So there's also future failures there. The dwelling itself is an original structure from 1984. And then to answer your question, the walls will be basically 8-foot concrete. And you would still be able to do a convex kind of pile of salt. So as far as capacity, it looks smaller, but it actually, we'd be able to rack the salt higher because the truss in the rafters wouldn't be as low as the existing structure that's currently at our facility. And then just for the public's benefit, for future replacement, the requirement would be in 20+ years would just be a new fabric cover for it versus an overall and entire overhaul and new structure.
Got it. So right now the salt piles basically just bear weight right on the exterior walls.
Yeah. So when we actually start, I'm nervous it's gonna fall in, and we're gonna be able to save some money with demolition. Actually, when we offload some of the salt prior to construction, and Jesse could probably comment that on a little bit further, but I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's still supported.
Yeah, agreed, Kevin. There's a lot of live load exerting force on those side walls right now, and we have but there are some other photos somewhere that show those walls starting to fail. So certainly in need of repair and replacement.
I got it. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks.
For some of us old timers in town, we remember how we got a new highway garage, it was turned down at town meeting. And then the following winter, there was a big snowstorm and it collapsed.
Oh, God.
I think what we would like to do is take care of the salt shed before that happens again.
Indeed, the roll protection in the front end loader would only hold up so much. So
exactly. Jody, let's see your hand.
Thanks, guys. This is a great presentation. Can you you might have said it and I didn't hear it. What is the ground? Is it cement also?
So the front of the building is concrete slab, and then there's a slab ramp. As part of this, we'd actually be removing that ramp and purchasing. They make a temporary one that it has a large enough load to withstand the front end loader. Which our ramp now basically is you're kind of at an angle, so it's actually a little bit difficult to load the vehicles prior to them going out and treating the community. And the other advantage is that would be able to actually go in between that and the park and recreation operations building. And so I'm sorry, I didn't fully answer your question. So then after the threshold of the building, it actually switches over. We scratched out the side and it roughly appears that there's about 6 inches of hot top there. So the bids will encompass if we do have to remove that, but we're going to try to build around that so that we'd only have to cut out the footings for the precast concrete block to build it up.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Kevin.
And so the footprint sounds like it's exactly the same. We're very close to the existing structure today. Is that right?
That's correct.
And are there any abutters? I was looking for homes on the site plan. It doesn't appear that there's any homes within any immediate proximity to this structure. Is that correct?
There is one home right
I'm
next to it.
here.
Okay,
Yeah, and
great.
she put a comment in the chat, just
Yeah.
calling it out.
Great.
So Nicole, what is your address?
13 Meeting House Hill Road.
Okay. And do you have any comments to make?
Yes, I put a bunch of questions in the chat. Hopefully everyone can see those,
Uh-huh.
but I'm happy to go through them. So yes, I agree. It is time to replace this shed. A tree did fall on it, damaged the roof. And the salt that's in there, I'd say the majority of the salt that's in there has been in there for decades. Like they're not even using, they only use the salt that's delivered to the front every season. So there's tons of old salt in there. So my first question is, where are all those tons of salt? How are they being removed? And, will there be dust? Right now we have a runoff problem from the current salt shed where the salt because of the flooding runs off and has killed the majority of the trees in our yard, and we're unable to replace them because of this major salt runoff. So you'll see dead trees along that fence that is also falling down, and I'm glad to hear that will be replaced. So I have questions about removal of the sand, the dust, the noise, the digging of all that removing of the sand, the water runoff plan, and the abutting conservation land that is right there. And how long will this take? The hours of operation. I've had issues in the past when we've had some construction back there where it was extremely disruptive. And also concerned if there is any digging, because my house is so close, I want to make sure my walls don't crack because it is that close to the structure.
All right, so Jesse, I'll try to lead this list here, and then just fill in any gaps if you would. So the sand salt that's in there, there's no expiration on that stuff. We're sourcing right now our surrounding communities that do have capacity in their current salt sheds, so that we could put it in there for temporary storage while this facility is being constructed. So as far as dust and noise, it'd be, a standard kind of, what you would perceive for any site project. The water runoff plan, well, you did see that. So obviously the problem now is all of that is offloaded because of an overtaxed system and finding its way to that emergency catch basin in the back of the facility, which is really the only saving grace that we have from not flooding. So that would be basically, it would take only that small area and the parking lot would discharge there, and 75–80% of the parking lot would actually infiltrate how it's supposed to in that facility. How long will it take? Depends on our contractor. So basically these salt sheds are they're almost sole source procurement through a Sourcewell vendor, which is a national procurement vendor. The salt shed itself will only take about a week or 2 weeks. All of the concrete block is precast, so it's basically just setting a subgrade, putting those down. The hoop truss is pre-stamped, it's basically just adhered and bolted to the top of that, and then the fabric. So that portion of it won't be that large of a production. And then as far as the drainage, I'm imagining that'd be conservatively another 4 or 5 weeks. Really not a large site. In I guess layman's terms, right? It's almost like a very large septic leach field that you would see at a residential parcel, obviously much larger and deeper. As far as daily hours of work, it'd be your standard 7 to 3 construction, Monday through Friday. I'm bearing any approval by my department for any unforeseen emergency. But again, this is a pretty straightforward project. Wouldn't envision anything going out of the norm. And then the height of the fence, we were discussing that. The existing stockade fence is 6 feet. We'd be looking to go 8 feet to give yourself and other abutters a little bit more privacy to the DPW. And then also 8 is basically the extent we can do without a special permit.
Okay. And so is the plan for when the salt trucks come during a storm right now, because the salt, is pretty close to the edge, they don't really go into it too deeply. With that change with the new structure, like, do you think the trucks will be able to actually go inside of the structure?
It depends on how stocked it is, right? 2015 there was a shortage in salt. So our operations superintendent is very aggressive on ordering to make sure we do have full capacity, bearing we do ever run into a salt shortage. Back in 2015, I guess we actually had to provide mutual aid to Sherburne, who didn't have enough salt. So I'd like to say that they can't fit in it based on we are prepared for whatever Mother Nature throws us. But in all intents and purposes, right, we'd be able to go right up to the walls on both sides. And then, typically that's only a day, or usually, I mean, deliveries really rarely come after hours, and usually staff's available to rack that, within the same day.
And will any of the construction go beyond where the current chain link fence is, like into the conservation land area?
No, so pretty much where the pipe ends is the property line. So that's really the extent of the project.
Okay. So when these towns come and pick up all the remaining sand, that's probably going to be a lot of big dump trucks and such that will be coming through to pick that up. I'm just, trying to figure out how much traffic, right, back there.
No, it would be all town of Dover staff. The surrounding communities are doing us a favor, so they're not going to pick up our sand salt. So
all right,
yeah.
so you guys will deliver it.
So Nicole, I think those are all wonderful questions. As an abutter, we understand your concerns.
I also represent the Conservation Committee for the Meeting House Hill Association, so I'm here for two purposes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are any other operational issues, I suggest that you and Kevin meet privately to review the actual implementation of the construction work.
Okay, thank you.
But most of your questions have been answered as I see your list right now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any other questions by the planning board members? Okay, Jasmine, would you be kind enough to walk us through the decision then?
Okay, so as Jesse explained, the project is to replace the existing salt shed on the site. Minor portion of the work does go over into the open space zoning district, but most of it is over the municipal site. There is a notice of intent filed with the Conservation Commission. They will be having a hearing on May 8th. And the utilities have been submitted to the Board of Selectmen for review. Mike and Jerry has reviewed the plans and given a positive review of the drainage on site. The height of the salt shed is below the maximum building requirement of 35 feet. It sits at 34.5 feet. And it also will look essentially the same as it does now, as it's replacing it an existing site, just better conditions. So this is a pre-existing non-conforming structure. It is within the setback, but the structure is existing. They're replacing it in kind within the same footprint. There is no expansion to the footprint, no proposed alterations to it. It doesn't increase the non-conformity or negate the pre-existing nature. The existing driveway access will not be disturbed by the proposed work other than the drainage being updated, but that does not impact the driveway openings or traffic on the site long term. The proposed parking is adequate to serve the accessory building, as it doesn't have any impact on parking use. The proposed material is in kind with the materials on the existing site. The applicant has applied for notice of intent with the Conservation Commission to mitigate impacts on surrounding isolated wetlands. It is designed consistent with the character of the neighboring structures, being the highway department, and has little impact on open space and natural landscape as the structure is being replaced in kind. The proposed structure will have minimal impacts on the groundwater open space on site since the site is already developed. The existing drainage on the site is being updated, which will be beneficial for the site long term. The structure will have a positive impact on town resources, as this is where the town houses salt during winter months to aid with ice and snow melt. The structure is in consistent quality and appearance with the existing site and complies with the remaining requirements of the zoning bylaws.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from planning boards members? Okay, Jasmine, just one thing on section 2. Yep, given Mike Angeri's email, I'd like to add a point number 4. And as follows, email dated 4/29/24 from town engineer Mike Angeri regarding stormwater and drainage. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I am going to read the decision. I move that after considering the application and other materials submitted at its meeting of April 30th, 2024, the board approved the plans entitled Site Plan by Weston and Sampson, stamped and signed by James Pearson, P.E., and dated April 2024, and plans entitled Elevations Plan by Weston and Sampson, stamped and signed by Brian McCusker, registered architect, dated April 10, 2024, with the following conditions. 1, prior to the issuance of a building permit, minor modifications to the site plan may be approved administratively by the planning board chair. 2, any future modifications to the site shall be reviewed and approved by the planning board. 3, the lighting on the site must not spill over onto any adjoining property. 4, the site is subject to approval by the Conservation Commission. And 5, the site is subject to approval by the Board of Selectmen. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, and we will do a roll call vote. Carol Lisbon, aye. Scott?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And Jody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Thank you to the board.
And Kevin, we've got 6 voters here. You should put in a plug for voting for this at town meeting.
Yes, what Carol said.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to agenda item 2A, which is a new plan for the mobile sign at 2 Walpole Street. Jasmine, you want to take this over?
Absolutely. So essentially, as this loads, the plan remains the same as it was as the last application, minus the LED illuminated signs where it says $3.99, where the price per gallon is. So this mobile sign will still be eternally illuminated by bulbs as it is now. This sign will not be illuminated in any way. These are just card numbers. It's replacing it exactly as it is, 98 inches in width, 44 inches in height. This is double-sided, so one on one side, one on the other. The pole is existing, so they're literally just replacing one sign with another exactly in kind.
Okay, do we have anybody representing mobile tonight? Nope.
Unless it's that phone number, I don't recognize anybody's name.
Who is phone number with area code 434? So did you know who that was when that call came in?
Yes, this is Marcus with Total Image Solutions.
Marcus, and you're here for the mobile application?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you here at our last hearing on the previous application?
I was not. Just
I'll
here for this one.
Okay, so Marcus, would you mind spelling your last name?
Ogburn, O-G, Burn, B as in boy, U-R-N.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, so planning board members, any questions on this application?
Yeah, so Jasmine, am I understanding this right? That the regular and Supreme, like the actual pricing, that is not going to be illuminated. It will only be the mobile sign?
Correct.
Because currently the whole thing is illuminated. The pricing is illuminated.
Mm,
And
Yeah, Scott.
I know this because I took that picture and sent it to
Yeah, you
everybody.
sent the picture.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you're right. That one is also LED illuminated, but it's internal, not the red LED light. It's just an
Oh.
internal bulb.
Okay,
Not-
so
not-
so it's
nothing
effectively
coming- nothing coming out.
it's effectively the exact same thing. They're
Yeah.
only showed two prices instead of three.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the main difference in the sign is that the new one will just scroll. The old one doesn't scroll. The new one will just be on a scroller machine to where the guy can just change the prices without having to manually change them with different placards.
Oh, so the numbers are internal to the board?
Yes.
Got it. Cool.
So there's sort of a motor in there that turns a physical scroll, and they can operate the numbers like electrically
Yes.
from.
And-
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll look the exact same. They won't light up or nothing like that. The sign will pretty much look the exact same. He'll just be able to operate it without having to physically, climb up there on a ladder or whatever he's using currently to change the placard to be able to do it via remote.
It sounds like a great compromise.
I'm just curious why we're going to two pricings instead of three.
I think that's just what the customer wants to display, two prices.
Okay.
We'll take it, Carol.
Yeah. We'll probably still be selling three, right?
Probably. It's just a surprise when you pull up to the pump, the price of it, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, any further questions?
Will the prices still be $1 more than in Medfield?
You know what? I can't make any guarantees on that. Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Good question.
Maybe he'll accidentally not work the scroller right, and you guys will get lucky, right?
Anything else? Okay, so I just will make a motion to approve the plans that are part of the application. Do I hear a second?
Second?
We'll do a roll call vote. Carol, yes. Scott,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Jody.
Yes.
Okay. Marcus, thank you very much.
You guys so much, and you all have a great evening.
You too.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Now we have some just business updates and so forth. Val, would you like to give us an update on stormwater? This is in preparation for Monday's town meeting. Val, you there?
She's muted.
And she may be away. We'll wait for Val to get back. And we'll go on to approval of the minutes of March 25th. I do have a couple of edits for the minutes. On page 2, section C for the sign permit. Okay, oh, that's interesting. Okay, this is something that Jasmine and I discussed the other day, the printout from the that was sent to us didn't have that, so that's taken care of. What we did was we added specifically why we denied the application. I think for historical purposes, that's important.
Mhm.
It's interesting that it says that, I assume this is supposed to be Mr. Oburn was representing the applicant. He just said he wasn't on the call, but maybe he was, and that's a misspelling.
Aha, good point. There we go. Thank you. Guess we weren't memorable.
No, no E.
OGBURN.
It's track changing, so it's struck
Ah.
through. You just,
Okay.
because it's an E, you can't tell it's a strike through.
Okay. Okay, and let's go to page 3. Okay, so see where your cursor is, one line down to Ms. Lisbon. Let's make a complete sentence there. So if we take off the what and just add about, and that will make sense. Okay, that's all I had. Anybody else had any comments on the minutes? In that case, I move to approve the minutes of March 25th as amended. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Carol Lisbon, yes. George,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Jody. Okay, thank you for those. And then we have the minutes of April 8th. So there's an issue with page 3, the decision for the pool, 28888 Mill Hill Road. Excuse me. Yep, I believe we added that the pool had to be filled by tanker. Okay, any other questions or edits to those minutes? In that case, I make a motion to approve the minutes of April 8th as amended. Roll call vote. Carol Lisbon, yes. George,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Jody.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Val. Take it
My
away.
apologies. I
Quite
got
all
pulled
right.
away for a minute.
That's what we figured. We went on to the minutes. It's quite all right.
Thank
Glad to
you.
glad to see you back. So if you would just update us with all the amazing work that's happened since the last last planning board meeting and prep us all for a town meeting on Monday. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, great. So do you want me to share the updated slides for the town meeting? And I think I had presented this back on April 8th, and we were hoping to have the board vote in support of the warrant article. I forgot to ask for that, so I'm hoping that maybe we can do that tonight. So maybe I'll really quickly run through the slides if that's okay, just to kind of refresh everybody. If
I think that's a great idea. I think, between
Okay.
now and then, we may be running into our friends and neighbors, and if they ask a question, we should all just have this fresh in our head,
yeah.
especially
I
the new
think-
points that we've made in the last week or so.
So is it okay, Jasmine, if I share my screen? Okay, great. Yes. Yes, great. Okay. I'll try to. There we go. Okay. So this is just a QR code for anybody at the town meeting who we're making copies, but there may not be enough copies for everyone. So we're giving people a chance to just use their phones and look it up online. It's article number 20. I'll go through these really quickly. For stormwater, Kevin will just be reviewing what stormwater is to kind of give a very brief take advantage of the educational opportunity with our community. On this one, we're focusing on the fact that there's two kind of buckets of stormwater management. One is man-made stormwater management receptacles, and then the other is using our natural resources to mitigate stormwater. And so that's kind of what this picture is showing. There's a combination of, and we just went through it actually with Kevin, with the catch basins and the different culverts and things that are used, that are man-made and put in place to manage runoff from buildings, driveways, parking lots, things like that. But then, especially when we're talking about residential properties, we have an opportunity to really focus on the natural mitigating effects. So, and that's where we're talking about the vegetative and different levels of runoff. So using trees, shrubs, grass, and also grading helps to kind of manage the runoff. And why now? The main reason, and I think one of the takeaways, and I'm hoping if anybody asks about it, we're able to kind of help them understand that the main reason why this is being updated and amended is because of we have to be in regulatory compliance. The EPA and the Massachusetts DEP is requiring all communities to update their stormwater bylaws. And so this had started several years ago, and it's continuing. One of the other items that kind of goes along with this is Kevin is working on updating the catch basins, counting all of them in the town, putting together maintenance plans for them. So that's part of it. And then this bylaw update is also a big piece of that. And then also, of course, we've had significant flooding over the past year or 2 years. And so many homes, properties, and our DPW was flooded. So it's certainly a time that we need to start looking at updating it so that the requirements are meeting more of the severe storms that we're having. And again, with the objectives, we're just looking at protecting our water resources, protecting our community, looking at, especially when it comes to construction, minimizing the cost to taxpayers for having to clean up after some of these flooding effects, or having to do extra cleanings to our catch basins. So this is really about having, when there's construction going on, having these erosion control measures in place to prevent some of those costs to the taxpayer, and then the impacts on the abutting properties that can happen when you have flooding and significant rains and a lack of mitigating efforts in place. So, and this slide is talking about the thresholds, which is 5,500 square feet or 25% of a lot. It's about the size of a 5-bedroom septic. And so that would be, one of the triggers if there's any land disturbance, including vegetation removal. And then, of course, anything that would alter the drainage that's hooking up or draining into a municipal system. And then storing fill on a lot as well. One of the things that we talk about when we're looking at stormwater management is avoid, minimize, and mitigate. So the idea is avoid disturbing areas when you can. If you can't avoid it, then try to minimize your impact on that area. And when, and as you're trying to minimize it, then coming back at the end and mitigating for those changes. And so that's kind of the approach that the EPA and the Mass DEP take. And that was kind of the lens that we looked at as we were putting this together. And so some of the high level changes to the bylaw are on this page. And I won't go through all of them, but I will highlight the third bullet, because a big change that's happening is in the current state. People can go in when you're doing a large development project. You can clear and have some land disturbance happening before you put any erosion control measures in place and before you even submit a plan to the town. So one of the big changes with these bylaw updates is that prior to any land disturbance activities, you need to submit your plan to the town for review. And if they find that you are meeting the thresholds that would require compliance with the bylaw, that you would have the erosion control measures in place before land disturbance starts. And then again, as we've talked about before, we're also a couple more bullets down, the utilization of best management practices. And that's really the focal point throughout all of the updates. Is the EPA and the state of Massachusetts provide a stormwater management handbook, and they also provide the stormwater management best practices. And so we've tried to incorporate those in the updates and really used those as preventative measures for the flooding and the impacts on our community. And so some of that is retention of natural resources, using tree buffers, grasses, and layering of vegetation. And so that's why, when we talk about the protective tree measures and the mitigation, we're focusing on that strip around the perimeter around a property. Because when you look at best practices, they talk a lot about using vegetative strips as a filter, both for improving the quality of the water that might be running off, but then also for kind of slowing it down and reducing that volume and the sheer force of the water. So we tried to kind of use that when we were talking about the perimeter of a property as being the protected area. That way it gives property owners the ability to do a lot of their development within the middle of their property and hopefully minimize the impact on all the areas around them. And then this kind of shows the standard timeline when you're looking at construction. And again, just to kind of emphasize, the pre-construction phase is where we've really made some improvements in our bylaw, where we're requiring the plan development and application process to happen prior to any land disturbance. And then again, putting in the erosion and control sediment measures. And then that's it. So I think the three big takeaways from this is, again, this bylaw is really about, I'm just gonna go back here, regulatory compliance and updating it to be consistent with what is being required by the state and the EPA. And then also it's about really preventing and protecting our community from floods and erosion. Many people have, in fact, it was the second largest volume of phone calls to the DEP over the past year is about flooding and stormwater management. So which is, why Kevin has really made it a priority to get this done this year. And then it protects our water supply. I mean, this is really about what is running into our water supplies. And so making sure that our water supplies are protected, that our neighborhoods and communities are protected, and that we're complying with what the state is requiring us to do. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take those. Yes, Jody.
Just one quick one. What happens if it fails at town meeting?
Yep. So we have asked Mike Blanchard to work with our town attorney to look at if there's if for some reason somebody feels that the tree piece is a step too far, that we could possibly take that out and try to get it to pass just by all the mandatory regulatory compliance pieces of the state. The tree piece is a best management practice, so it's still extremely important, but if the town feels like that's not something where they're ready to go right now, then we will have an amendment ready to pull that piece out.
And is this 2/3 vote?
this is a 50% majority.
Val, I had a question, the preceding slide, third bullet, large
Yes.
land disturbance activities. Do we define large?
So, I mean, I guess we're thinking large is 5,500 square feet or more, but
Got
if
it.
you
So like
feel-
if I'm getting my house connected to Aquarian, that does not constitute a large land disturbance activity.
it may not if they're trenching and you're not disturbing 5,500 square feet.
Good luck with that, Scott.
Hypothetical.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that people didn't feel like if they, are reseeding their lawn, or if they're, putting in a raised garden bed or something, that would necessarily trigger this. It's really something, I mean, when you look at about a 5-bedroom septic, that's a pretty substantial square footage area.
So if just continuing with my hypothetical, like if I'm getting that trenched, who makes the judgment on how much square footage is being disturbed? Like,
Well,
what do I have to do like incrementally to be in compliance with this?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that you probably would have some sort of a plan in place, or maybe an engineering survey, or some sort of something that you'd have some sort of, like, you'd know how many feet you're trenching.
I guess. Okay.
And also, usually when you're trenching, you probably have to talk with Kevin McCabe anyways. I believe we have a trench bylaw if you're going along the streets.
I would also add that all the various inspectors will know about this bylaw.
Mhm.
So if you're doing something that requires something from the Board of Health, if it's related to your water, or a
Yeah.
plumbing inspector or an electrical inspector, that they will all be attuned to this as well.
Mhm.
Okay. Just hypothetical. Thanks.
Mhm. Mhm.
So Val, if I understand this correctly, will this require, assuming this is approved, is there existing infrastructure that, for example, is in our roads? You had an illustration, for example, of a storm drain.
Mhm.
Will it require that a lot of, or some of the existing drainage systems will need to be upgraded, I assume, correct?
So that is so this bylaw will require any storm drains going in the future will need to be updated and will need to comply with the new requirements.
Okay. It's not
yeah.
retroactive,
No,
not-
correct. Yeah. So usually the way it works is with bylaws, anything that's existing is grandfathered, but anything going forward would have to comply with the new regulations.
Val, my question is, well, Jody kind of beat me to the punch a little bit here, but it's going to be, how much of this is sort of state mandated and how much is our additional requirements that were put on top of that? You mentioned the tree portion of that. Is that what's our sort of additional piece, or are there further elements?
So no, I mean, everything else is really state mandated, the way that it's written. Those are all state mandates. This is a best management practice, which is also a very strong state recommendation. They say many times in the handbook, and they've created an entire handbook about the best management practices that they kind of give you. Let me just forward to another slide here to show you. So here's like EPA stormwater and erosion control best management practices. And so they strongly recommend, picking something along these lines. So you can see that they're really talking about preserving the natural and existing vegetation. And then they even talk about replanting and mitigating when possible. So we really looked at what the best management practices are already, being, I don't know if it's required, but it's definitely recommended. And here's the Massachusetts under Standard 8 for erosion control, and they give you the menu of strategies for reducing. And the second bullet is tree planting and other vegetation.
Okay.
So these are really along the lines of what they already are strongly recommending and in some cases requiring. So yeah, so we really are keeping with what the state and what the EPA is asking to do.
Thank you.
I would add that one of the reasons that this has taken 15, 16 months from when we first started is that the original take on it by the consulting firm was strictly based upon the narrow letter of the law of the MS4 requirements. And that the team that was put together, which included Janet Bowser from Conservation Commission, Mike Andrew, town engineer, felt that there was really, it didn't make sense for Dover to be going through the effort of doing a bylaw if it didn't also include what's known as the best management practices and that are highly recommended and that most other towns and cities in Massachusetts, in fact, have implemented in their bylaws as well.
Makes
So
sense.
that's the combination.
Yeah, and one of the things that we also I'll just go back, this one. So we looked at the surrounding communities and what they do with their stormwater erosion control and their standalone tree bylaws. Many of them have individual ones, but then you have to go through 3, sometimes at least 2, sometimes 3 permitting processes, as well as paying 2 to 3 sets of fees. So we felt like this also helps reduce some of that bureaucracy and create some efficiencies there as well. We're trying to just, balance those 3 things into one process.
Who's presenting, Val, the bylaw?
Kevin McCabe will be
Got it.
presenting.
And are you available for questions?
Yes.
Does it work that way?
Yes. Yeah.
Val, we'll be up there shoulder to shoulder.
Great. I mean, I think, when I just walking through these slides with you right now, like to me, this is a really important slide because, everybody does this. The stormwater and erosion control, that's like the non-controversial stuff. And then when I look at the standalone tree bylaw, which, maybe is going to be the thing that gets people's like hackles up, I'm not sure. It's almost like stormwater and erosion control, like, come on, guys, this is almost like administrative. This is just like best practices in like towns everywhere.
Right.
It's the standalone tree bylaw. And I think that, people in Dover will value that. Like they want to be a town that cares about this. So this is a place where I hope Kevin will spend a little time and you'll have the opportunity to pipe in.
Yes, no, definitely. And I'm hoping with the fact that our rural appeal tends to be the top, the top 2 next to schools attracting residents and, residents who are already living here, it's their priorities, it's usually schools and our rural feel. So I'm hoping that they will also feel that this is helping to continue that rural feel.
Right. It shouldn't be shocking that Needham doesn't have a tree bylaw.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yes.
So that's kind of like the sell.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Val.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, no. Thank you. Thank you everyone for your questions. They were really good.
Any other questions about the bylaw? Well, I have to say, once again, having spent a little bit of time on this with Val, probably about 1/20th of the time that she had spent on it with Kevin and with Janet, that we wouldn't have this bylaw if it wasn't for Val's efforts. So thank you, Val. I think it's a wonderful, comprehensive bylaw that's good for the town.
Thank you.
So why don't we segue right into the wonderful things you did last week for Arbor Day with the tree committee?
Well, before that, can we get a vote?
Oh, a vote, absolutely
Yes.
right. So I make a motion to support the stormwater bylaw being presented at the May 6, 2024 town meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll roll call vote. Carol, yes. George?
Yes.
Scott? Bill, I think that was a yes, right, Scott?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Bill
Yes.
and Jody.
Yes.
Okay, thank you again, Val.
Thank you, everyone, for your support. I really appreciate it.
Nice job, Val.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, really quickly, I'll share another presentation of, so as you probably maybe have seen that we have the Arbor Day. Oops, let me get this. Friday was Arbor Day. And we also, I think I've mentioned here that we were also awarded officially as a Tree City USA designated community. So we planned and you know, our tree preservation committee partnered with a lot of different groups throughout the community to put some activities together that we were hoping would be appealing to young folks and families and retirees as we moved through the month. So we're excited that we are Tree City USA now officially, and we are joining the many other Massachusetts communities that have already been designated. One of our activities, and we partnered with the DPW and with Park and Rec, and also with the Chickering Elementary School to plant or to provide 500 seedling trees to each of the students, K through 5. So there were 500 seedlings. We were able to get some volunteers to help us out. We went to the DPW garage. We prepped them and packaged them, and then took them over to the elementary school, and they were handed out to each of the students. So this is our group that helped to do all the prepping. And then there was a tree planted outside at Chickering. And so Kevin McCabe and Mark Aloni worked on identifying a tree species, and then worked with Deb Reineman, who's the principal, to identify the location. And so this was the tree planting that they did just outside. And we're hoping each year we'll be able to replace one of the trees on the site. Some of this area is really nice. It's to represent kind of a forested area. So Deb was really happy that we were able to contribute something to this area. And then other things that happened at Chickering is we made a little poster board to help educate the kids about trees. And then the librarian put together a really nice book display. So, and in fact, the technology, I'd have to really give kudos to Dr. Reineman. She really embraced this. They also put together a little scavenger hunt outside where they got to use their iPads. They had QR codes on 10 different trees, and they had the kids go around to each tree, identify them, and then get a clue to where the next tree is. So they had a lot of fun with that. We also had a little activity at the Dover Library, an arts and crafts activity where we had 4 crafts. So at the top of the page, you'll see one of the librarians with a table of children working on the crafts. The craft that they're doing is the one right below that. It's basically creating little trees to represent each season. And then on a couple of the other tables, we had some handprint trees that we were making. We made bird feeders out of pine cones. And then a picture that I didn't get was they had some leaf rubbing and texture rubbing activities. So that was really nice. And then on the far left side is the display that the children's section of the library had with the beautiful tree. And then on the very ends of it are actually jokes, little tree jokes. They're like knock knock jokes. So when you open those trees, they can get the answer. So that was really cute. They said that the kids had a lot of fun with those. And then at the regional school, at the middle and high school, there were 2 trees that were planted. The funds were raised by the Sustainability Task Force. Angela Lynn is one of the presidents of that task force, and she's also on our tree preservation committee. So they raised the funds for the trees and then worked with the director of facilities to have those planted. So we're really excited for them to do that. And then a couple other things that we had going on. We partnered with Open Space, and we had a vernal pool and native tree hike for families. And a friend of mine took her 3-year-old daughter, and she said they had a great time. Jay Crocker, who is one of our members, provided a lecture at the library on tree maintenance for property owners. And then we just had some book displays throughout the schools in all the libraries. We did a tree planting, and I think they haven't done the tree planting yet in Highland Cemetery, but it's coming. and then our banner that we have displayed. So these were some of the activities that we put together. And then some of the publications that you may see coming out shortly. We have a pending submission to Dover Stroll and a pending submission to Dover Weekly, as well as there was an announcement probably on the electronic sites and the Dover site, the Dover newsletter that Chris Costello sends out about our Tree City USA designation. So trying to educate and communicate to the community some of the things that have been happening. And that's it.
Well, again, your leadership has been amazing, and what a fantastic tree committee and all those activities. So
It was really fun. We had a great time partnering with so many of the different organizations in town. So it was really good.
sets
Well
a
done,
high
Val.
bar
That was
for
really
you
good.
too.
And
Impressive.
everyone on the committee really helped out. Everybody kind of took a piece and moved forward with it. So it was great.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Great.
As a member of my 6th grade tree committee in 1986, I say well done.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you, Val. Jasmine, a couple of quick updates from you on the housing task force, and the Legion.
So the last land use meeting that we had, it was made clear that the Legion was asked to remove, they had some temporary handicap parking out front that they'd been asked to remove because it wasn't anywhere near ADA compliant. And they also were asked not to have people parking in front because the way that they would have to come in, they would need like a double curb cut to make that U shape to drive in at the front of the Legion. So they were asked not to have cars park out front either. The Legion says they've been, Walter says the Legion was compliant with that, that they did recently just put out something else on Facebook about being open for lunch and that, you know, guests were welcome, that you didn't have to be a member of the Legion. So I still don't know how we still don't know how they're identifying a guest, and if you have to actually show up with someone as a member of the Legion, or you can just show up and say, I'm a guest and I know so-and-so. You know, it's not perfectly clear. They do have a tent outside that Walter has said they can't have seating at because it doesn't meet the code, and Jason has also said they can't have seating out there because that would expand the existing use and their septic can't handle that expansion. So we anticipate that the seating underneath the existing tent that's out there will be removed as well. They did finally install their bollards, though, real bollards in front of the propane tank, per Ed from the fire department, because those were installed inappropriately and didn't have bollards in front of them. So now we at least have bollards there. But the one question I didn't get answered yet, I did ask, but it sort of got overlooked, but I'll ask again, is I'm just curious why they don't have to be ADA compliant as it is. Like they put in ADA, you know, handicap parking, which was nice, but they didn't have to. And Walter said if they wanted to do that, they would have to do all of this grading to the parking lot and put in a ramp. And I was just curious why they didn't have to, maybe because they're a private establishment, because it's members only.
Sure, all those questions will get answered when the whole situation is reviewed with town council.
Yes, so we're meeting with,
The Legion's been there a long time, and they've had people going there for a long time. Are these laws new that they haven't been compliant with? They're clearly compliant at one point. It seems like there's a lot of attention being spent on the Legion lately.
they had updated their kitchen without permits, and somehow the town found out, I don't know if it was annual inspection or annual food inspection, but they had updated the kitchen without any appropriate permits, installed a frylater without a grease trap, and it seemed like they were going to increase their use without increasing their septic, which is currently barely hanging on for the use that it is. So they would really need to update that. So it just became a health concern if they were expanding their use based on all of their new equipment that they had brought in. So that's what started shining the light on the use on the Legion, where the updates to the kitchen, the posting on Facebook, advertising on Facebook, advertising outside, come in for lunch, menus online, just sort of seemed like they were expanding their outreach. as it were, compared to previous years.
Okay, thank you for that. And the Housing Task Force?
The Housing Task Force, we just met last Wednesday. We are waiting on updates from Jeff Davis on our MBTA zoning language that will move forward on around June. We don't have any updates on the, I believe it was Trout Brook. There were records requested, but I'm sure not sure, but there's concern there'll be an appeal there. That we may or may not be prepared to deal with. Does everyone know about the ZBA now, Carol?
I think I announced it last meeting that Alan
Yes.
had resigned, so the search is on for a new ZBA member. If anybody knows anybody, and preferably a real estate attorney, but not totally required, but it would certainly be an advantageous applicant who had that kind of background to let Mike Blanchard know, or me know, and I'll let Mike know.
Luckily, Nina said she would be helping the ZBA until that time, especially if a 40B application came in. But it's, luckily right now we just have some ADUs, so hopefully it stays quiet until we find somebody else to get on the chair. The housing education website is live. As far as I'm aware, there's only one link that needs to be updated right now. But that has gone live with all of the information on it.
I put that in the chat, guys. That's if you want the link to the land use and housing development page.
So please give us our feedback. It's very, very, very easy to update. If you want, we actually have a Google Doc set up, literally mirroring the web page. So if you want the Google Doc to show me what changes you'd like to make, it's a little easier. The website itself is not intuitive. I wouldn't feel comfortable giving everybody a login to update the website. You can certainly tell me any changes that you'd like to see made, anything that you'd like to see added. The one thing we don't have up there yet is the presentation. I haven't been able to get, Mona said to ask Chris, and Chris said it okay to give him a minute, but I don't have the video from the presentation to the Housing Task Force from Jeff Davis on the MBTA communities, but I have the slides, but not the actual visual presentation yet. So that's the only thing that I know for certain I'm waiting on. And then a 40B sort of, Mike Blanchard said he would give a write-up, so.
Yeah, that was about the process.
Yeah.
I think what we were trying to do with that, as you look at it, if you take a minute to look at it, is put as much in very plain language what these things mean. And so you'll see the tone is meant to be kind of not too, acronymy, for lack of a better term, so that people can really actually understand what we're talking about when we use certain terms. So love your feedback and ideas about how we can make it better.
Carol actually made a really great point. I think it's something really good to keep in mind as we go through the website, that the difference between affordability and, just reasonable, income or things like that. So, 40B is affordable housing. MBTA is not affordable, but it's market rate housing. Exactly. So I think we just, to Carol's point, we should really be careful how we use that word affordable and use it appropriately, not necessarily sparingly, just making sure we are always using it appropriately to try not to confuse people about what we mean when we say affordable, to try to keep that clear in their minds.
Right.
So thank you, Jasmine and Jody. I know the two of you put in a tremendous amount of work to get that content developed, and look forward to seeing the final version that's on the website today. And ask everybody else, again, everybody else, take a look at it. Different eyes, different lenses, different focus will make a difference. And we also, in addition to making sure that we've got the right new information on it, if you come across old information that's no longer valid, let us know, because the way the website's designed and the search capability, there's stuff all over the place that you just even can't find. And then suddenly you come across it and you go, oh, well, that's no longer valid, or that's 10 years old. So we need to know about that to clean up the stuff as well.
I would say that if you are reading some of these pages about, particularly for the moment, 40B and MBTA, and something doesn't make sense to you, I would love to know that, because like, we're the planning board, it should make sense to us. But if it's not making sense, then we have to keep working on the language. And I think that your perspectives on that would be super helpful. So don't be embarrassed to tell me that something doesn't make sense, because if it doesn't make sense to you, then it doesn't make sense. So please let us have it.
Okay, great. Now on to something that we've been delaying on for a while. And with all the progress we've made for the town meeting, it's ready to get back to something that we spent a lot of time on, and that was of interest to all of us, and that's the village center.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I'm gonna turn this over to Bill and George and Jasmine.
Great, great. Yeah, it's been a long road with a lot of starts and stops, and so I think we are at finally at a point where we're happy to be putting something before the planning board for review. And this has really been something that initially I was involved with, and Jasmine came on at the same time George came on, and so the three of us have been working closely together, to create a document. I know it was sent out earlier today. I don't know if people have begun to have a chance to review it, but what George and I thought would be helpful this evening is maybe I could just take a moment and provide some sort of opening thoughts, a little background as to the genesis of why we are doing this. And then I can hand it over to George and Jasmine. Please jump in just to get into some of the more of we don't want to delve too much into the details, but we do want to provide some descriptive detail as to the scope of what we've provided here. And again, I think as an opening statement, I think that what we all feel is that this is a first step in terms of creating some guidelines for the Dover Village. And this is a product that's been created by the three of us. And the next step is to really put it before you all for your comments and input, which we really welcome. And this document is going to evolve. There's clearly things that we have missed, things that we have focused on. And so I think once the committee, the planning board, has come to an agreement on a document that we all feel is an improved document, it's a good document, then I think that the conversation turns to now who should be reviewing this document, who should be we seeking input from in terms of taking us to the next step. So with that being said, obviously for just a quick refresh, the genesis of this effort was really twofold, in that over the years, we've really seen a decline in the activity and the vibrancy of the Dover Village. And to the point recently with the state of the Dover, Dover Deli, the Dover Market, it's just become very, very inactive, unfortunately. The other side of it is that we don't really have any guidelines in place that would provide a would-be developer coming into Dover with a sense of what our vision is for the town. And so it is a combination of those two concerns, and that this guideline has been created. And so that's really what we wanted to, it's important, to keep that in mind. We've obviously, we initially, when we started this program, we went out, we did a survey. We had about 200 Dover residents provide input on their feelings about the Dover Village, what they liked, what their preferences were. We sought feedback from, as you know, we had a meeting at the Dover Library where we had hired Brovitz consultants to provide some working sessions in terms of further elaborating upon the visioning of the Dover Village. And so a lot of what you see going into this document is incorporates a lot of the prior work of working with Brovitz and other groups, the other group, to create this document. So the document itself, if you the first page is really just an introductory of what this objective is, and then if you scroll down to the next page, this is really one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to provide some definition of what the Dover Village Center is. And so, Jasmine, are you able to scroll down just a little bit to show the map? So really, at preliminary review, this is the area that's been defined. This is an older document that was actually created by Brovitz that really looks at the non-government, non-town owned property that sort of encompasses the Dover Village area. The one obvious glaring exception here is that the Dover Carroll School, the community center, is included in there, and that needs to be edited and revised. But in terms of third-party land that sort of encompasses the Dover Village, this area in purple is the areas that have been identified. Obviously, the Charles River is a school, and that would be exempted from these guidelines ultimately. I should add one point that I neglected to make, but an important point is that these are not laws that we're putting forward. These are guidelines from which we would hope a potential someone seeking to develop in Dover would consult and utilize. But through, I think, the work of this board and hopefully additional input from members of the community, we would ultimately like to take some of these guidelines and actively move them into more of a bylaw where they could become law and become binding upon any potential future developers who would be seeking to do something in the village. But that will take time, and we felt that this was the initial first step.
Yeah, Bill, wouldn't this tee up a potential rezoning that would therefore make these standards applicable to this zone district?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly right. Yes.
And am I looking at this right? On the top is the library, on the left is the Legion, bottom right is Country Properties, bottom left is the the new top warehouse.
You've got it. That's right.
That's right. Okay.
That's exactly right. So maybe what I'll do is I'll stop talking, and George and Jasmine, please feel free to jump in. But maybe, George, do you want to sort of walk through some of the table of contents and some of the areas that we were focusing on?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to go through this piece by piece in great detail, but I thought I would sort of go through and just point out the high points that speak to what we're trying to accomplish, and maybe where some of the most impactful aspects of this would come in. The document in the broadest of senses, it addresses the site layout, building design, architectural features, use of materials, parking, awnings, entryways, signage, lighting, and landscaping effectively. What we're trying to do at the end of the day is we effectively took the image of a classic New England village and try to develop sections of guidelines to achieve that look, flow, and purpose. If you go to the site layout portion here, Jasmine, page 5, this goes through a lot of areas here. Again, setbacks, parking lots, curb cuts. I'm not going to go through all of it, but what I would highlight is the parking is sort of an important change that we'd like to make here. To effectively reduce the visual impact of parking lots while maintaining the convenience and sort of pragmatism of a parking lot. And so really, when you're walking down a street, we want to see the sort of buildings in the village without seeing the parking. And so you sort of do that by putting the parking at the back of the buildings. And that's one of the things that we look to address here. You can go to the top of page 6. And you can see that you can see that the main sort of strip of the village there. Look at those brown buildings. You can see that the businesses are in the front, the parking's in the back. You can see a little bit of that in Needham. They have some of that as well. That same dynamic. The second part involving parking is landscaping. We make mention of the planting strips, ground cover, hedges, trees as a guideline, looking for one deciduous tree for every 8 parking spaces. And then further using landscaping as a screen or a buffer between parking areas and pedestrian sidewalks. In a perfect world, we mentioned that we screen from the street a vehicle. You want to have that about 5.5, 6 feet tall. Evergreen species are good, obviously, because they're year round. And fences and walls are to complement the architecture of adjacent buildings. We mentioned that in several places through the report here. For lighting, you can see the next page there. Much like when we talk about pool houses, we don't want light to be cast off the immediate sites. Compatibility with the scale and architecture of the existing structures is important, and a preference for a greater number of shorter fixtures rather than sort of large fixtures that you might see in a parking lot at a school or a large parking center, a shopping center. So if you see the bottom of page 7, a couple of pictures here. The top. So the top one is sort of not perfect, but it's a shorter lamp. Light does not emit very, very far. That's encouraged. The one below that is discouraged. So something is discouraged. One that's sort of cast light farther out. Also mentioned is just the quality of the light. We'd be looking for an incandescent look as much as possible, and not something too bright or cold. Next section is on building design. Again, creating an aesthetic that's in keeping with our region, the traditional styles of the best of our region for both existing and new buildings. Areas that we sort of benchmark to towns would be the likes of Concord and Mass, Woodstock, Vermont, the Cape, and you could see below there on that picture, that's the downtown of Woodstock, Vermont, Jasmine. Yeah. So, that incorporates a lot of the features that we address here in terms of the windows as multi-pane windows, awnings, plantings, trees. Yeah, so that's another element there. Next page. So that picture is Concord, Mass, which also we try to find pictures that incorporate a lot of the elements that we were looking to replicate sort of in one shot. This next section addresses new construction, and it hits some different areas. I'm not going to go through all of them. The height, scale, massing, direction, entry, roof shapes, all addressed here. I would say that massing it mentions breaking up uninteresting box-like forms into smaller, varied masses from historic periods. And again, if you go to that picture from Concord, you can see that that's what that incorporates. Different roof pitches, different sizes of buildings, and which just creates a nicer, more interesting town center. Next page. I'll get to rehabilitation of existing and historic structures, respecting the original design of the characters of buildings that are there. When we look to rehabilitate or replace historic structures or add to them, new construction encouraged to use the historic nature of the village center that's in place. Avoid altering historic material, effectively addressing moldings, architectural features, corbels, masonry, all to be preserved or enhanced when possible, as seen on a picture on the next page, page 11, top of page 11, where this is probably a dramatic example, but you could see here where they took a large sort of old building and made it much more interesting, incorporating a lot of architectural details, perhaps in keeping with that town's center historic buildings. Next section goes through architectural elements and what we would like to see. Roof design for small buildings, keep it simple. For more complex, large buildings, more complex. We showed the picture earlier of Concord there with different roof arrangements. There's the same dynamic on the picture that Jasmine has up right now. Style and pitch of roofs. Avoid flat roofs like you would see at a strip mall, for example. Again, varied roof styles, both horizontal and perpendicular to the street. In terms of materials and colors, we'd emphasize historic design again with the use of slates, wood shingles, and colors that would be, as it says, historic neutral shades: gray, charcoal, black, natural wood. In terms of roof projections, any mechanical equipment that's mounted on a rooftop, think HVAC, needs to be screened. Similarly, propane tanks, dumpsters outside of a building to be screened from public view. Building height requirements not to exceed 35 feet in height, 2 stories, which is in the bylaw. And again, I mentioned peaked roofs. The next page there, you can see obviously.
Hey, George.
Yeah.
Could I just maybe give you a chance to breathe? What we did do is that obviously we do have some existing bylaws that are in place, particularly as it relates to signage, general building heights. There are some setbacks, parking. We have tried to adopt and make sure that we've incorporated as much of that as possible, such as building heights, into this document. It's not perfect. We also recognize that we have a very, very high parking requirement for retail. We would probably want to change that at some point after some discussion. But the main point here is that in drafting this document, we were trying to be mindful of the existing bylaws that were in place and to incorporate them as best we could.
That being said, as we all go through this and share our comments, we should keep track of those areas that we want to explore for bylaw change, so we don't lose track.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding us of that, Bill. The parking is the one that came up from the beginning in that regard. The bylaws are referenced in here where appropriate, so that's a good thing to point out here as we go along. Sorry, I think we were at page 13 there. So again, looking at just roofing again, we reference slate tile roofs as sort of a yes, and discouraged our metal, more commercial style roofs that we would say we would discourage. Addressing corner lot buildings, we make the point of saying the buildings that are on a corner should have 2 facades. Jasmine put in a nice example of that there. Exterior siding, again, harmonious with both the vision that we're trying to create and what's existing in town. Red brick, clapboard or appropriate plastic, metal, concrete block, cinder block, that type of thing to be discouraged. Vinyl siding discouraged as well, if we could at all avoid it. And you can see at page 15, got examples of some traditional sort of roof lines and clapper shingle there, and then below is in our own town on page 15, which is a brick building with features around what we know what the building is. Brick, windows with multiple panes, design over, above and below those windows. We get the point. That's what we're trying to encourage once again, which brings us to windows and doors. The shape encouraged for windows and doors. Overall, I would think think what you see here, and not so much large single pane panels of glass that are sort of flush with the front of a building. So multi-pane, interesting moldings you can see there. Ditto the one below that, transom windows and the like. Yeah, I'll keep it at that. More of the same as you go down to page 17. Different types of windows to break up an expanse of glass. Muntins on windows over the top. In terms of materials, this is again all addressing windows and doors. Front facades, wooden doors and glass are recommended. And there's our beloved Dover Deli there, doing a good job displaying what we're looking to accomplish. The next page, top of the next page, an example of what we would not like to see. I think we could probably all agree on that. Again, just more sort of generic, large, commercial looking application. Shutters and awnings to be encouraged. Shutters in a size that's appropriate and appropriately proportioned for the size of the windows, as we have there in a picture. Awnings, you can see at the top of the next page, looking to sort of mimic this. This is again Woodstock, Vermont. So your traditional canvas awning, and we would discourage those types of awnings.
And George, if you could maybe just take a second, Jasmine, if you could just scroll back to that photo of Woodstock, because that does really capture so much of what I think the flavor and feel of what we were looking at, meaning more of the signs, the landscaping, the outdoor potted plants, the awnings, the trees planted, a combination of brick and some storefronts. Not necessarily on as large of a scale, because obviously Dover is not appropriate, but I think that this picture does capture a couple of those individual little design features that we think could help to enhance some of the charm in the village.
Yeah, and that's why I try to point that out earlier with that initial picture of also Woodstock, that sort of how much can you fit into one picture that addresses what we're trying to accomplish, and these pictures are pretty good at that, I think. To Bill's point, plantings, signage, a lot of aspects there. Where was I? Quick mention of residential to commercial conversions, in terms of keeping as much as what is possible, particularly buildings that are historical in nature. Which brings us to signage. We have a bylaw for signage in place, which has much more sort of specific legal detail than this. But this speaks to more of the sort of qualitative wish list, we'll call it. What we're looking for and what we're not looking for, and maybe verbalizing some of that, or getting some of that down in writing. So sign types that would be encouraged versus not encouraged. The first where are we here? Oh, right. Sorry, go up a bit. Yep. Yeah, random placement of signs around a building, discouraged. Obviously, Joe's Tire and Body Shop, we would like to not have that for a bunch of reasons, the size being one of them. What we'd like to encourage is is projecting signs out from a building. As an example here, avoiding freestanding signs if we can.
Hey, George,
yeah.
I had a quick question. What would happen to existing businesses? Would they be grandfathered in, or would they be expected to comply?
Yeah, I would think it would be. It's a good question, and I'm sure that Carol could answer that for you better than I could. I can't imagine that we're all of a sudden gonna run through the front door of mobile and tell them to change their sign. I mean, we
Oh, we
spoke about
can't.
that. We can't, right? So last time they came through with their proposal, I brought that up, right? It's not in keeping with what's on the books now, but as Carol pointed out at the time, it's grandfathered in, and that's sort of it.
All of our bylaws really, unless they're very specifically mentioned in the bylaw, which I assume Jasmine is legal, but I don't believe that we've ever done that. I remember, always starts with, everything's grandfathered and you start new. I'll give you an example. I mean, our bylaws right now say that a commercial establishment can only have 2 signs. Yet Dover Country Properties has 4. Right? So, if Dover Country Properties was to go out of business and a new commercial establishment was to go in, then they could only have 2 signs. But
Got it.
most of the stuff is grandfathered.
Or it's quite possible that if an owner were to come to us and requesting a special permit on something, that we might grant it, but we also might make a request at that time to make some additional changes to the property, which could include signage.
Yes.
A little horse trading.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, so just continuing here on the signage, again, this is more sort of aesthetic than legally prescriptive, but you're going to get the point here, and that's the purpose of these regulations is to put some more specificity in some areas while the existing bylaw addresses others. This freestanding sign here, well, there's one here, the one before that. Portable signs are both discouraged. Materials for the signs, in a perfect world, we'd like them to be natural materials. Wooden would be best. Illumination, which is also addressed in the bylaw, which we all know. But in terms of, again, what would be on the wish list, sort of exterior illumination, smaller fixtures. There's that example there that I think Jasmine snapped. Yeah, so you get the point there. In terms of landscaping and fencing, you've seen a lot of examples of this already in the Woodstock pictures that we've seen. Street trees, in a perfect world, if room, or nice on both sides of the sidewalk, and or shrubs and trees. In terms of hedges and natural springs, we talked about that in the parking lot section, separating walkways from traffic or even residential yards, planted borders and the like. Trellises, flower box. Again, you get the point. We saw pictures of that not long ago. Walls and fences. Walls. We mentioned here that we don't have a lot of stone walls downtown, but they can be used in an appropriate manner. Obviously, we have a lot of stone walls throughout town. There's an example of potentially what one of those could look like on page 25. For fencing, again, traditional natural materials, a wooden picket fence is certainly appreciated versus a chain link fence. Discouraging metal or split rail fence as well. And I'll skip to lighting. Similar to the parking lots and other applications that we discuss, lighting to be, not more than necessary, we'll put it. Display windows should be lit from within. Sod lighting used only to illuminate the sign. You can see that on the top of page 27. Which is, this is a large area. Obviously, we wouldn't have anything probably this big, but to create the point, that's lighting that's created sort of ambiently from within the building. Street lighting, historically and architecturally appropriate. Too little light's better than too much light. Looking for fixtures that are between 8 to 12 feet. And there's that picture there down there at the bottom. which shows both, the street lighting at the on the place of business itself and a lamppost. And I think that covers it. So again, the purpose of that was to sort of hit the high points. And as I mentioned, and as Bill mentioned, there's bylaws that address a lot of these areas. These are to exist within those bylaws, obviously. A couple of which, the parking, I think, is one that's going to require some work. But for the most part, I think these live within that. And again, just effectively took a picture of a village that we would like to see, both in terms of aesthetically and in terms of use, and turn that into just sections of guidelines that we think that achieve that purpose. So, this is a very beginning look at this, open to any and all commentary, thoughts, comments are welcome. Unless, Bill, you have something you want to finish with, or Jasmine.
No, I think it's exactly right. This is something for the board to be able to sort of take and review and absorb and react to. And I'm sure that this is going to take many iterations as we move forward.
Well, thank you guys. That's an amazing lift. That's incredible that you put that all together.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, obviously there's lots to think about, but it's incredible to have something to react to. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great job. This looks really comprehensive. And I know just talking with folks in town, there are so many people who are excited for something to happen in the village center. So I'm really excited for this initiative. I think it's really great.
Yeah. A lot of people have that I've spoke to share that same feeling.
Right.
It's long overdue.
It's time, right? No, thank you guys. This is a big lift. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just echoing that, what really well done. Realized that this was a really heavy lift, and you all took the initiative to put it all together, and seeing it all in one consolidated document makes it feel more real, and like we have a baseline, we have something to work off of now. You realize that there was a lot to pull together, and also like just the spirit of this exercise, like this specificity, this level of care and detail is what's going to preserve the integrity of our community and make it, keep it a special place and serve to enhance it going forward. So thank you.
Yeah, and again, I really do want to sort of make it be clear that I really want this to be the sort of product of the planning board, right? I think this was George and we sort of took it in its infancy to kind of create something, but I think it would be, with all of our collective input, I think we could really, really create something that would be very comprehensive, very detailed, thoughtful. And ultimately, I think if we can get some of this into the bylaws so that it has some teeth behind it, I think that's really what's going to help preserve and allow us to sort of execute some of these design guidelines, these desires that we're sort of in their infancy outlining.
What is the most appropriate way to get feedback to you all? Would you want to see like this in a Google Doc with comments, or I don't know, like what's most efficient?
Yeah, great question.
It's maybe I think, why don't we have Jasmine answer that, since she might be the one that's putting some of that together for us. And also, while we're talking about Jasmine, we talk about heavy lifting. She did the heavy lifting on this, so kudos to her.
Thank you. I think it would be great if everyone could give their comments in the comments in the Google Doc, if that's what works for you, or if you want to just do a track change, save it as a version with your initials on it, so that way we know which version it is that we're looking at. And then just a few things I'd like us to keep in mind as we go through is, obviously these are guidelines, they aren't bylaws. So we are literally just requesting any developer who comes in to do any new construction to please respect and comply with these. And it's completely up to them to say, no, thank you, we don't want to. We have no way of forcing them to comply with this. We don't actually have a village center zoned. In addition to that, we also do have some hurdles in our center, which of course are water and sewer. So in speaking with the Board of Health, it is absolutely capable for more than one site to share a well. How that works is between the owners. The town typically doesn't get involved in that. So it's doable. It can be done. The other hurdle is septic. And currently right now, our bylaws state that you can't share a septic. If we really want to have the downtown developed, that's a further conversation that we might need to have with the Board of Health of how do we get there? Because looking for the setbacks you're looking for, putting parking in the rear, keeping the buildings on the front of the walkways where the sidewalks are, keeping the street trees in front, that's going to require some redesign of some of the septics and potentially sharing some systems. So that would require some lifting of the bylaw eventually at some point. If you really want to see this developed, reusing is a completely different thing because those are already existing. But if you really want to see growth in the downtown, just keep in mind those are your major hurdles right now.
Well, and to the point, I think if we are, I think we've all talked about the idea of maybe a restaurant in the village, for example, and that would be a very, very specific use that would have particular need for a upgraded septic and water capability. So a case in point, and you can obviously, to her point, we didn't go into that at this point with the document.
Which is why this is a wonderful first step and has really jump-started the momentum from last winter.
Yeah.
So I commend you all on that. I think to Jasmine's point, I think we should all agree on what approach to take on getting our comments and thoughts to Jasmine, so that we don't mix and match. And I would think that comments and Google Docs are probably good because we can keep them tracked. The other thing is that, as I said before, and to the conversation we just had, we need to keep track of those things that are important to us. So by next January, we have a list of items that we might want to make into bylaws for either the May 2025 or the May 2026 town meeting. And we don't want to lose track of that. So just because our bylaws now limit this or that doesn't mean that that's what we ultimately want in a design document for an overlay district called the Village Center.
And,
so sort of.
And Carol, is the plan going to be to get the highlighted areas zoned and pass the bylaw in one fell swoop, or is that going to be two separate town meetings, do we think?
I have no idea. I think it depends on what all those other bylaw changes are and what we think politically we can get done.
Yeah.
We tend to invest with small steps in Dover.
I would think there'd be a lot of support and momentum behind this.
Could
I
be.
would think so too.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree. But then again, there's always a little bit, there's always those things that come out of left field that you don't know about.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the thought initially was, let's address first and foremost those things that help to, prevent the worst case scenario of our village center. Let's focus on those. And I do see this as something that, as we evolve and develop this, it's going to take a couple of town meetings to get approved the necessary bylaws that are going to really put some sort of metal, if you will, behind what is the final product that we craft.
And when we say we, it's a very broad we. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole section on street lighting and sidewalks and stuff, that's a DPW, issue as well, with complete streets grants. I mean, it's complex. Jody?
I think related to this, something that's come up periodically that maybe as we're building that list of, maybe we should consider this or that, is consideration of a bylaw that would prevent national chains from coming in. We had talked about that way back when with the Dunkin' Donuts. And some communities have that. Like, for example, a scenario where the Dover Market turns into a CVS.
We have that, Jody.
Oh,
We
we
did the
do?
bo-
I thought that.
We
Yeah,
did
we-
that.
Yeah,
We took care of that about 2 years ago, actually,
Thank
when,
God,
and
forgot all about it.
that's okay.
So
No, no.
what's the
believe me.
limit? What's the number?
12 stores, I think is what it was. If there's more than 12 stores, Carol, am I correct? It's a special
That-
permit at that point?
I just pulled out my bylaws and it's a table of use.
Oh, thank God.
21B.
Totally forgot we did that. Black
Formula
that
businesses,
out.
remember? Yeah. And I'd have to look up the definition somewhere else,
Okay,
but.
great. Well, don't let me take up any more time. Thanks, guys.
But that's exactly, but you raise a great point. It's those little incremental
Yeah.
bylaw approvals that are going to enable us to sort of build a little bit of some of the guardrails that
Yeah,
are exactly
exactly.
what we're talking about.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
That whole thing, that was, Bill, that was your thing, right? You stood up at town meeting and did table of use and the definitions, and it was sort of like the low hanging fruit that gave us a couple of quick guardrails
Yeah.
Yeah,
without much complexity.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
Good, it's a good question. It's important stuff in the context of this, I think.
So is the idea that everyone can provide their comments into the Google Docs, and then maybe we can set aside a meeting where we can have more of a group discussion about thoughts that people and what people have written and ideas, and then kind of take it from there for a further iteration?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'm just looking at the calendar and maybe we, right now we have nothing planned for our June 17th meeting. So maybe we target that for having, what should we call it, draft 2?
Yeah,
So that if everybody's inputs and comments and thoughts can get funneled into Jasmine, then we can plan to go over that on June 17th. And then we can start sort of going out to individuals. I think we one or two of us can meet individually with each of the selectmen just to get some input. The Council on Aging does a monthly meeting where they have somebody from different departments, like Jasmine presented, 2 months ago. Mike Blanchard presented last week on the Warren article. We could ask Janet to put us on the agenda for sometime in September, October timeframe to get COA input. They attended very well our meeting last winter. And then we can go start meeting with other groups. We obviously have to spend a lot of time with Kevin over at DPW and the Board of Health and so forth. So it's a process. But if we can get a draft done in June that represents a certain level of our thinking as a consensus planning board, then we can go out and start talking to other folks, I think. How does that sound?
makes sense to me, but what do others think?
I think it's a good plan.
Okay, so let's target the June 17th meeting for that. And that should give everybody enough time. Jasmine's got a lot on her plate, even after the town meeting, to get the regulations and the public hearings done in May and early June. So June 17th sounds like a good time for that. I think it's important that we all keep the momentum going. Okay, well, it's after 9 o'clock. This was a great discussion. Thank you, Jasmine, Bill, and George, for all this incredible work on this document. It's absolutely amazing. I will remind everybody that Monday is May 6th and it's town meeting. Scott will be presenting the construction bylaw and I'll be presenting the solar bylaw.
I don't need to bring anything, right, Carol?
Right, so Jasmine has sent over to Felicia the slide deck for both your bylaw and mine.
Yeah.
And that will be there and loaded into the system. And we're gonna have 250 copies of each bylaw available as a handout,
Great, thank you.
which Sue will be copying and getting to Felicia.
All set, Carol.
Oh, great. Ooh, that was quick. So that didn't get flooded today?
No.
No, just our office.
Yeah, there is a flood in the townhouse since they're working on the new roof.
Oh,
And
no.
we had the storm this morning. So we'll be sitting sort of up front in the center row if we all want to join together. And if anybody hears anything between now and then that's relevant to either Scott or me for our presentations, or the Housing Task Force, I will be standing up there with Robin when she presents the request for $100,000 for a housing consultant.
Mhm.
And I guess I have to do a homework so I can answer some questions. But Jasmine will be available as well from the audience. And that's where we are. Anything else?
Just are we posting, are we meeting like the planning board at say 6 p.m. before a town meeting briefly, or are you not having a planning board meeting before a town meeting?
Yeah,
And
we
if
are.
you are we posting it for the school or?
Yeah, we always post it because we never know what comes up last minute with some bylaws.
So should I post one at 6 o'clock via Zoom or
So I think it was already posted, right?
for this Monday?
I think so,
Yeah, I think it is.
There.
Oh, okay, perfect.
but I actually think we're not going to need it.
Okay, lovely. That would be even better.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Okay, anything else? In that case, great discussion night. Thank you, everyone. And I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:18. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. There we go. Wonderful, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a good week and see you on Monday evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.